It's strange, isn't it? You're grown now. You've got your own apartment, your own responsibilities, your own bank account. You can choose where you live, who you date, what you eat for dinner. And yet, one phone call from your parents can undo all of that in seconds. It doesn't even have to be a full-blown argument. It could be the way your mom asks, "Are you eating enough?" with that tone. Or the way your dad says, "When are you going to settle down?" As if you're still 19 and irresponsible. And before you even realize it, your chest tightens, your voice sharpens, and somehow you're right back in your old bedroom, the one with the posters on the wall, the one where you swore you'd never let them get to you again. But here you are, saying things you promised yourself you'd never say, feeling emotions that are way too big for the moment you're in. Why does this happen? Why, even after years of growing, working, and building your own life, do you still end up in the same fights with the people who raised you? The easy answer would be, because they haven't changed. But deep down, you know it's not that simple. This isn't just about arguments, it's about something older, something deeper. It's about an invisible thread, the kind you can't cut with willpower alone. A thread that ties you to old roles, old wounds, and old versions of yourself. And here's the part most people never think about. Those versions of you aren't gone. They're still inside you, waiting for a familiar cue to come alive again. That's why your parents can make you feel like a child, even when you're standing in your own kitchen, holding your own car keys, living your own adult life. But here's the good news. There's a way to break that cycle. Not by cutting your parents out, not by pretending the past didn't happen, but by finally understanding what's really going on beneath the surface, in a place most of us never look. That's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to look through the lens of Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, the man who believed that our earliest relationships write the blueprint for our emotional lives. I'm going to show you exactly why you still fight with your parents, even as an adult, and more importantly, how Freud believed you could stop repeating those same old arguments. Because here's the thing. If you've ever walked away from a conversation with your parents feeling drained, frustrated, or guilty, and you have no idea why, it's not because you're broken. It's because something much older than the present moment is speaking through you. And once you can recognize it, you can finally choose something different. So stay with me until the end of this video. Because when you understand what's really driving these fights, you'll see that they were never just about the words being said. They were about something your mind has been trying to resolve for years. And if Freud was right, once you bring that hidden pattern into the light, it can't control you the same way again. It almost never starts as a war. It starts as something tiny, almost harmless. Your mom casually mentions, "You've lost a bit of weight. Are you eating properly?" Your dad glances over his glasses and says, "So, any plans to get a real job yet?" Or maybe it's something as small as them reminding you about a chore you forgot last week. But suddenly, the air in the room changes. You can feel it, that slight tightening in your stomach, that heat rising in your chest. You tell yourself, don't react. Stay calm. You're not going to let this turn into something bigger. And yet, it does. It does. Your voice sharpens, theirs hardens. You can hear the volume rising, the pauses between sentences shortening. The tone shifts from curiosity to criticism. And there you are again, in the same old dance you thought you'd left behind years ago. This is where it gets unsettling. It doesn't just feel like you're disagreeing about food, career, or last week's chore. It feels familiar, almost rehearsed. That's because in a way, it is. When you were a child, your parents weren't just providers of food and shelter. They were your first teachers in love, trust, authority, and conflict. The first people you learned to impress. The first people you feared disappointing. The first people you learned to argue with, and the first people you learned you couldn't always win against. In that home, you didn't just grow up, you trained. In an emotional arena where the rules were never written down, but they were always enforced. Every smile you earned from them, every disapproving sigh you heard, all of it wired itself into the way you react to people. That's why the family home wasn't just a shelter. It was your original emotional battlefield. And now, years later, that battlefield still exists, even if it's invisible. Because when conflict shows up today, your brain doesn't just see two adults having a disagreement. It sees a reenactment. It hears the echoes of old conversations. It feels the same rush of adrenaline you felt when you were 12, standing in the kitchen, defending yourself against the same kind of comment. That's why a single word, a single look, a single raised eyebrow can sting more than it should. Because it's not just today's comment you're reacting to, it's every other moment like it, stacked and waiting in your memory. Here's the real question. Why does your brain still treat your parents as if they have the power to make or break you? Why, even after decades of independence, can a single moment with them still make you feel like the powerless version of yourself you thought you'd outgrown? It's not just habit. It's not just because they're my parents. It's something deeper, something that lives in a part of your mind you don't consciously control. To understand it, we need to look through the eyes of Sigmund Freud, the man who believed that our earliest relationships don't just influence us, they create the very blueprint for how we experience love, conflict, authority, and safety for the rest of our lives. And once you see your relationship with your parents through Freud's lens, you may realize you've been fighting a battle that started long before you knew how to name it. Freud saw the family as far more than just a place where we learn manners, brush our teeth, and figure out how to tie our shoes. For him, the family was a stage, and not a quiet one. It was a place of drama, a theater where the first acts of our psychological lives were performed and recorded. Every interaction was a line in a script. Every smile we earned from our parents or caretakers became a kind of applause. Every frown we feared became a warning note in the soundtrack. And every argument we lost or won became a rehearsal for how we'd handle conflict in the decades ahead. It's tempting to think of these as just memories, snapshots of the past, locked away in an old photo album. But Freud argued something far more unsettling. Those moments don't just stay in the past. They shape the very architecture of our minds. They define what love feels like, what respect feels like, even what home feels like. Think of it like this. The first relationships you ever had taught you the rules of human connection. Those rules get stored not just in your conscious mind, but deep in the unconscious. And once they're in there, they have a way of becoming the default settings you operate from, even when you think you've outgrown them. Here's where Freud got even more provocative. He believed we don't just remember those early emotional patterns, we replay them. Not out of choice, not because we like the pain, but because on some deep level the mind seeks out the familiar, even if the familiar is uncomfortable, even if it hurts. This is what he called repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to recreate old conflicts in new situations, as if trying to fix the original wound. It's a bit like a theater director who refuses to retire a decades-old play, convinced that if the cast just performs it one more time, with a slightly different delivery, they'll finally nail the perfect ending. So when you find yourself snapping at your mother over something small, or bristling at your father's tone during a family dinner, it might not be just about the phone call you missed or the offhand comment about your life choices. It might be that, without realizing it, you're not just in today's argument. You're back in a scene from 20 years ago. You're that 12-year-old again, trying to get the recognition you didn't get. Or you're that teenager, desperate to be heard without being shut down. The fight you think you're having now may actually be the continuation of a fight that started long before you knew what the word psychology even meant. And here's the cruel twist. According to Freud, you can't just will yourself to stop. These patterns live in the basement of the mind, the part that doesn't respond to pep talks or New Year's resolutions. And they operate automatically like reflexes. You might promise yourself, next time, I'll stay calm. Next time, I'll keep my cool. And yet, next time comes, and you're right back in it. The heat in your chest, the edge in your voice, the feeling that you're playing a part in a drama you didn't audition for, but somehow know by heart. Why? Because there's another force at work. A force that doesn't just make you repeat old conflicts, it makes you seek them out. Even when you swear you're done. Freud believed this force was so powerful that it could turn the most peaceful family visit into a minefield. One minute you're talking about harmless things, the weather, dinner plans, how the kids are doing, and the next, something shifts. You don't even see it happening until it's too late. Someone says that word or gives that look, and the room is on fire. It's as if the air changes. You're not an adult in the present anymore. You're an actor who's just been handed an old, familiar script, and you start reciting your lines without even realizing it. And the scariest part? This doesn't just happen with your parents. These patterns can spill into your friendships, your romantic relationships, even your career. You can find yourself drawn to bosses, partners, or friends who, in uncanny ways, echo the dynamics you had as a child. So, if you've ever wondered why certain people trigger you so deeply, if you've ever noticed that the same type of conflict keeps showing up in your life, no matter how much you try to avoid it, it might not be bad luck. It might be repetition compulsion, your unconscious mind dragging old wars into new territory, trying to get a victory it was denied long ago. And according to Freud, there's a reason this is so hard to escape. It's not just about memory. It's about an invisible force that pulls you back into those battles, no matter how far you think you've run from them. It's a force Freud believed could make even the most peaceful family visit erupt in seconds, without you even knowing why. Let's talk about it. Before we go deeper, if you're the kind of person who loves unpacking the hidden psychology behind everyday life, you'll want to stick around here. We do videos like this every week, breaking down big, intimidating ideas into real, relatable stories. So hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell. That way, you won't miss the next deep dive that could change the way you see yourself. Freud had another idea, one he called the return of the repressed. In plain language, it means this: the feelings you bury don't stay buried. They don't evaporate. They don't dissolve with time. They wait. They sit quietly in the background of your life, tucked into the corners of your mind you rarely visit. And when the right trigger comes along, a phrase, a tone of voice, a look, they don't just return, they erupt. And they often come back stronger than they were the day you first felt them. Think about it. You might have convinced yourself you were over it, over the way your father could find the flaw in anything you did. You're older now, maybe even successful in ways you once dreamed of. You've had your own milestones, your own moments of pride. You thought you left that need for his approval behind years ago. But then you're back home for dinner. The meal's almost over. The mood is light. And then, in the middle of casual conversation, he makes that comment, that familiar little jab. It might not even be cruel by objective standards, but it's delivered in his voice, with his timing. And in an instant, you're not 35 years old anymore. You're 15, sitting at the kitchen table, trying to hide the sting, feeling the weight of every other time you've heard that same note of criticism in his voice. This is the trap. When you react to moments like that, you're not just reacting to this moment. You're reacting to all the past moments, layered together, compressed like sediment in stone, and now breaking loose all at once. That's why the anger feels so sharp. That's why your chest feels tight or your throat closes up. You're not defending yourself against one small remark. You're defending yourself against a lifetime of similar wounds. Freud believed that in moments like these, the conscious mind, the part of you that says, I'm calm, I'm logical, I'm a grown adult, is no longer running the show. Instead, the unconscious mind seizes the wheel, and it's been waiting for this moment, like an actor waiting for their cue to walk on stage. The scene has been rehearsed countless times in the shadows of your mind. Your father says the line. You feel the wound. You respond with the same defensive script you've always had. And in this way, the past doesn't just haunt us, it inhabits us. It's important to understand, this isn't about being weak. It's not about being too sensitive or unable to move on. It's about how your brain collapses past and present into a single emotional instant. It's about the way old pain sneaks in through the cracks of new moments. And here's where Freud's thinking gets interesting, maybe even hopeful. He didn't see us as prisoners of these patterns forever. He believed there was a way to stop reenacting the same emotional play over and over. But here's the twist. It's not the path most people expect. It's not about fixing your parents. It's not about forcing them to finally understand you or apologize or become someone they may never be capable of becoming. The escape route is harder and far more uncomfortable. It's about turning towards something most of us spend our lives avoiding. The parts of ourselves we've locked away right alongside those memories. Because until you face that, until you bring the repressed out into the light, your parents won't need to trap you in old roles. Your own mind will do it for them. And that's something Freud was pointing to. It's the part of the process that almost nobody wants to do, but it's the only way to truly break free. For Freud, emotional freedom wasn't about cutting ties, proving a point, or winning arguments. It began with something far more subtle and far more radical, making the unconscious conscious. In his view, most of our conflicts aren't actually about what's happening now. They're about echoes from the past, old emotional wounds, ancient family scripts, and half-buried memories that still shape how we speak, listen, and defend ourselves. When you react sharply to your mom's tone or bristle at your dad's unsolicited advice, Freud would say you're not just responding to them in that moment. You're responding to every other time in your life you felt dismissed, pressured, or misunderstood, especially as a child, when those moments carried the weight of survival. So how do you break that grip? Not by ignoring it, not by being the bigger person while secretly boiling inside, but by bringing those patterns into the light where you can see them for what they are and then choosing something new. Here's what that looks like in practice. Step 1. Notice the pattern. The next time a familiar tension rises, pause. Catch the exact moment when irritation, shame, or defensiveness kicks in. Don't rush past it. Ask yourself, what does this remind me of? It might take a few tries, but often the emotional flavor is the same one you felt years ago. Maybe it's the helplessness of being 12 years old and having no say, or the frustration of being told you were overreacting when you knew you weren't. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget, and if you can name it, you can start to unhook from it. Step 2. Separate past from present. Once you see the link, remind yourself, this is today. I am not the same child I was then. You are not trapped in that bedroom. You are not facing the same power imbalance you once did. Yes, the feelings are real, but they're being pulled forward from an old chapter of your life. This is the moment where you take back authorship, where you say, that was then, this is now. Step 3. Choose the new script. Here's the powerful part. You don't have to play the same role anymore. If the old you would have snapped back, go silent, or storm off, experiment with something different. It could be as small as taking a breath before responding, or calmly saying, I'm not going to talk about this right now. Or even, and this is advanced level, showing genuine curiosity instead of defensiveness. It's not about letting them win. It's about refusing to let the past dictate the terms of the present. Freud believed that this shift, this act of conscious reauthoring, is what frees you, not because your parents change, but because you stop reacting as if they have the power to make or break you. You stop unconsciously auditioning for their approval. You stop trying to win an argument you've been fighting since childhood, and you start living from a place of emotional autonomy, where your sense of worth is yours, not on loan from them. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. Once you start breaking the old script with your parents, you'll begin to notice you can break it everywhere else too. The boss who reminds you of your critical father, you respond with calm authority instead of shrinking. The friend who talks over you the way your older sibling used to, you set a boundary without guilt. The romantic partner who triggers that same fear of being abandoned, you notice it for what it is, an echo, not an omen, and choose connection over panic. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And once you rewrite it in one place, you realize you can rewrite it anywhere. But here's the part Freud didn't fully explore, at least not in a way that most people could live out day to day. What does life actually feel like when you've stepped out of that old role? When you're no longer the dutiful child or the black sheep or the quiet peacemaker? That's where things get unexpectedly beautiful and sometimes unexpectedly lonely. Here's the quiet truth no one tells you. Freedom doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's a shift so subtle you almost miss it, until one day you walk into your parents' house and feel something strange. Space. Not the physical kind, but an emotional space between their words and your heart. It's like the invisible string that used to pull you into the same old argument has been quietly snipped. You still hear their tone, you still notice the way your mother sighs or the way your father raises his eyebrow. But it lands differently, it doesn't hook you. This is the moment you start to see them not just as parents, the towering figures from your childhood, but as people. Flawed, complex, carrying their own scars, their own scripts, their own unfinished stories from long before you were born. And when you see them this way, something inside you softens. You realize their sharpness may have roots in the way they were spoken to as children. Their overprotection might not be control, but fear. Their silence might not be indifference, but an old survival tactic they never learned to put down. This doesn't excuse the hurt, It doesn't erase the years of tension, but it changes the battlefield. Because when you stop fighting the same war, you stop defining yourself by whether you win or lose it. And in that space, you begin to discover something even more radical. You are more than the role they once assigned you. You are not the difficult one. You are not the golden child. You are not the disappointment or the one who always takes care of everyone. You can be something new, something not yet scripted. And here's the beautiful irony. When you stop playing your old part, you give them a chance to step out of theirs too. Your father doesn't have to be the unyielding judge. Your mother doesn't have to be the worrier. They can be just people. Sometimes awkward, sometimes funny, sometimes unexpectedly tender. The relationship might not transform overnight. It might never be the glossy, heartwarming picture you once hoped for. But it can become real. Real means you can disagree without it spiraling. Real means you can set boundaries without burning the bridge. Real means you can talk about small things, a recipe, a TV show, a memory, without the weight of the past pressing down on every word. And in that realness, there's room for something you didn't expect. New conversations, new boundaries, and maybe, just maybe, new closeness. It's not the fairy tale ending. It's better. It's the start of an adult-to-adult relationship, one where love isn't tangled with old power struggles, and where both sides are free to simply show up as they are. And here's the thing. Once you taste this freedom, you realize it's not just about your parents. That same shift, the ability to see the person behind the role, to choose a new way of responding, spills into your other relationships. Suddenly, your partner's criticism doesn't sting the same way. Your friend's silence doesn't spark the same panic. Your boss's disapproval doesn't send you spiraling. Because you've learned something essential. You are not trapped in any role unless you agree to play it. And that's when you understand the fight was never the real enemy. The real enemy was the script that told you who you had to be. If this video spoke to you, take a moment to reflect and share your thoughts below. Have you ever felt pulled back into old patterns with your parents or anyone else in your life? Comment your experience. Your story might help someone else see their own patterns in a new light. And if you want more insights into understanding yourself, your relationships, and breaking free from old scripts, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. We're exploring the hidden forces that shape your life and learning how to take control of them one step at a time. Because the first step toward freedom is awareness. The next is action. Start your journey today.